Okay, so for the critique from the Liquify week of Liquify images, we only had two people submit, which is a little disappointing, especially now when these things count for so much more since we're not meeting face to face. But anyway, we only had two, so we will critique the two. So these are Paul's images, and I'll kind of read through a little bit of his description. The first one is called Funky, well, it says Funky Foliage Liquefied. The text that was sent says, oh no, that is, okay, so Funky Foliage Liquefied. This was his second ranked photo. He's still really drawn to the vibrant colors. He created it using the changing channels technique that we learned, where we, swapped out the red, green, and blue channels from three different documents. He thought it would be an interesting one to go back to and try the Liquify tool on. He made no further adjustments to the photo than I had before, but other than Liquify. Honestly, just messed around with the scene, pushing and swirling it until I thought it looked good. I was just experimenting, but I'm pleased with how this one turned out. It said he used Procreate on the iPad to do this, which has a tool which is similar to Liquify in Photoshop. Alright, so the second one is Gender Blind Liquefied. He said this is probably his favorite image of the three. He loves the lines created by the glow sticks and the concept of abstract portraits, which he feels was executed well here. He said, I know you've seen this one, but his adjustments he felt made it better than before. Desaturated the colors a bit so that the attention was put more on the lines than on the colors, and made sure to leave them apparent because they're important to the message, hence the title of the image. He also added quite a bit of noise to give it a more vintage look aesthetic, and when liquefying he said, I tried to distort my face to the point that it was just barely recognizable, and expanded the lines of light through the whole image. The image already had a fluid and wavy appearance, but I pushed it further with the Liquify tool. And then finally is Liquefied Layers of Loose Rock. He said this was his least favorite of the three. Captured it on spring break on a hiking trip at a small community park in Bethel Park. He said, I love the lines created by the rocks that were jutting from the hillside, and I think pushing them back and forth with the Liquify tool made this image look quite interesting. When taking nature photography, I prefer minimal edits, so I stuck to that with this photo as well. I brightened the scene a touch, cropped it a bit, saturated the oranges, desaturated the yellows, and added fair amounts of texture, clarity, and dehaze. And I ranked this one last because I favor the base image that does not have the Liquify effect, but he still wanted to try it out, and he did use Photoshop for this one. So let's take a look. The raw files, I believe, are here as well. So I think this is an interesting subject as well. It's an interesting rock formation. But I actually do like this. I might agree with you that it is of the three, because it's a little more recognizable. It's less abstract than either of these two. Yeah, I don't know. I like all three of them. I like what you did with them. It was a good use of the technique, particularly the color one, the foliage on the left, I thought was an interesting abstract as well. So all three of them very different, but pretty well done. And then Taylor had two images that she submitted. These are obviously, I'm guessing, done in a bathtub. That was one, and this was the other. I'm going to put them side by side here. It looks like a lot of noise has been added here as well, which is fine. It's pretty interesting to add a technique like that. I'm particularly fond of the one on the left. So I'll tell you why. These images tend to look a little two-dimensional, which I think is okay. A little more illustrative. Almost remind me of an old Monty Python image that you would see on the Monty Python show or something like that. I just really love the fact that the one on the left has her eyes sort of obliterated. Um, there's a lot of meaning that you could draw into that. I'm not as thrilled with the position of her hands because I think they do kind of overpower the image a little bit. But again, with an illustrative look like this one, you can get away with stuff like that a little bit. I just really like what was done on the face. And the one on the right is interesting too. I wish I had a little bit of your input as far as what you were thinking here. But it was a really interesting concept and a good use for Liquify. So, with that being said, this week's instructional video on business I know was probably a little long, a little boring. So to make up for that, we're going to have the assignment for next week be something a little bit more fun. We're going to leave it a little bit open-ended. What I'd like you to do is to illustrate the word imagination. And you can do that any way you like, as long as you do explain to me what your thought process was, why it says imagination to you, and keep in mind all of the tools and techniques that you've learned so far, everything from composition to lighting to Photoshop, whatever you want to throw at it, um, you know, but imagination is the word that we want you to illustrate for next week. So have fun with it. The deadline again is Thursday at 1 p.m. and we'll be in touch again.